the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, this video here, I'm going to do as it was asked as a request by a viewer named Nikki Mitchell. I'm going to assume that's a girl. If not, then it's a boy, and I apologize. I don't know, so I didn't say. But anyways, this person wanted me to do a video on the INFJ personality type because they felt that they kind of related with that. And then the question was, how does it impact my personal life? So it was the idea of it when I read the comment sounded interesting to me. I don't mind talking about the INFJ personality type, but what I started to think about was how spirituality, or how the personality type plays a role in our individual spirituality. And so I want to kind of approach it from that angle after I talk a little bit about the INFJ personality type and how it impacts my spiritual life. And the only reason I'm going to do that part again is because it was a request from a viewer. So this one's for you, Nikki. I'm doing it just for you. And then kind of go into a little bit about how your personality type can, I don't know if I would use the word impact as much as I would use the word influence, or have a positive impact on your spirituality type. So with that being said, I think the first thing that I would say is that this was advice given to me very early on when I came back into the church, was to find out what type of personality that I was. And I think that had to do with the person that I was talking to, just, I think had a really good gift of wisdom and could see that he was dealing with a very different type of person. And so, in the way I would react to things emotionally. And so that's where the idea came in. So the first thing I would do is I would first give the advice. If you haven't done that, I think it's a really, really good idea. I know it's helped me tremendously. And to go online, you can pay for it. I think I paid like $50 for the test, and it was about an hour-long test. And it was basically just questions, or like scenarios, and then how you would react and that kind of thing. And so, I had done some reading on personality types, and before I had taken the test, and I felt that I'd fallen under that category because it was almost explaining me exactly. And so when I took the personality test, I wasn't surprised that I came out as an INFJ personality. What I was surprised is that I fell to the very, very extreme spectrum of that personality type. Okay, with certain aspects that kind of go along with it, like social anxiety. And those things can be kind of, enhanced from things that you go through in childhood. Okay, so I do struggle with social anxiety. Like, if I were to give you an example, if I go to a restaurant, and I don't want to make this video about me, I really don't. That was the whole kind of shift thing. I don't want to say the word I too much. But if I'm in a restaurant and I'm sitting with someone and having a conversation, I can be completely engaged in that conversation, hear what that person is saying, but at the exact same time, I will hear and feel the conversations, 6 or 7 different conversations going on around me. And I take all of that energy in, whether it's negative, positive, where my faith is involved. I'll hear gossip, and, then you want to start praying for the person. And so I have to get up from the table and go outside just to breathe, to recharge and kind of cleanse myself. So there's been a number of videos where I've done this, where I've gone off for a while and just taken off and got out in the open where I needed to go. And even there were comments that I looked different, or like I was glowing. That's the reason why, because I've gone and recharged. Okay. And so the INFJ personality type, I'm going to talk a little bit about it. And again, this is basically in response to the one viewer, Nikki, that asked about it. Okay, the INFJ is basically, it's introverted, intuition, feeling, and judging. Okay, and it's kind of weird the way it works. The qualities of the personality type, or the traits, the strongest traits of the personality type, both work interiorly, or how would I say, introverted, and then the other type works extroverted. Okay, so the empathy, the pure empathy, which is different, which is one of the reasons the INFJ is so rare, because pure empathy is different than sympathy. Pure empathy allows a person like myself to actually experience the emotions of another person in my own body as if they were my own. And so I was recently with a friend, and they had told me that one of their clients had passed away. And when she said that, she almost started to cry. And I felt that pain in myself so strong that I almost started to cry, even though I had never met the client. So the feeling, the empathy, is an extremely powerful thing. And you pick up different people's emotions, whether they be negative or positive, and that can affect my mood. So I have to spend a lot of time regulating my emotions. And what I mean by that, like when I get away and some people leave comments that I look different or more energetic or brighter or whatever, the phrases they use. One of the reasons is because the emotions are regulated. In other words, I go away and I begin to separate all the emotions that I'm feeling that came from other people out of my body and keeping my own. Okay, so emotional regulation is a really important thing. With the it's a very rare combination of pure empathy to be able to feel what somebody else is feeling, and the highly focused interior insights is the intuition, which is extremely sharp. And that's really where you pick up all the information. So it's a combination of pure empathy, of literally feeling what someone else is feeling, and then picking up on verbal and nonverbal cues that on a high level, high intuitive level, that creates a picture. And so with those two, the intuition, right, and the empathy, this is one of the reasons that I moved into a healing ministry, which can be very tasking. But this is one of the ways that I've used my personality type in a positive way in ministry. Now the empathy part of it, that's extroverted. Okay, so in other words, we're more in tune with other people's emotions than we are our own. And it's extremely deep. The INFJ personality type will feel on an extremely, very, very deep level. So if I were to give you an example, let's say, and I'll just give you an example. Let's say an INFJ experiences a heartbreak, okay, or a loved one dies. As they would experience, their experience of that loss and that pain would be the equivalent of someone who is not an INFJ personality type losing like 7 members of their family all at the same time. So the loss is magnified. The pain is magnified. And so in this sense, I've learned to, and I didn't even realize this until Nikki had left the comment and asked me to do this video. I didn't even realize this in myself until she had left the comment, and I started to think about it, and I began to realize that is exactly the way I am able to identify with Jesus and his suffering, because it's elevated. And so where that comes into play in the spirituality, and this should be constant with all of us, not just an INFJ personality type per se, but all of us. And I've said this before, anywhere suffering comes into your life, you can find somewhere in the life of Jesus that you're able to identify. So at the same time you're suffering, you suffer with him. And when you suffer with him, you console him. And when you wrap your arms around that suffering, and then offer it to God as a spiritual sacrifice, if you will, it becomes redemptive. And that's where you move into the area of spirituality of what's known as redemptive suffering. Okay, and it can become a very, very powerful thing, and you can experience, different graces at the end of that. I would say that it's usually the most healing aspect of that comes when you're forgiving someone who has hurt you. Okay. The other thing about the INFJ personality type, and I'll also recommend to Nikki that there are videos online where you can look up the INFJ personality type. And again, I would recommend every single one of you take a personality test, a good one, because it can help you go into an area of ministry that you're comfortable doing. Like an INTJ, okay? Very straightforward, very systematic, strong decisions. People like that can work in an administrative role very easily, as where I don't ever want to be in an office environment, unless I get to leave in the truck and go check things. I just don't want to be I can't do that. I'm too restless and too, I want to be moving, and so take a personality test, because let's say that you're sympathetic to people. Okay, so right off the top of my head, a ministry that you might be interested in doing is like taking the Eucharist to the sick. Some kind of helping others in that sense. And so in the personality type, you can find an area of ministry or spirituality that fits with the personality type. Now, personally, I believe that, that where charisms come in, okay, I think that God gives the charisms according to the personality. So the charisms actually magnify the whatever personality type it is. Okay, so let's say that you're let's say that you're like an INTJ or a personality type that is very good at administration, very good at working out, like parish direction, things like that, pastoral councils and keeping notes and all that kind of thing. Well, a charism that could be given with that is perseverance. And so in other words, you persevere through different courses, different classes, different computer classes that would enhance the ministry. And so I believe that charisms are given in that sense to enhance the people that we already are, that God's already created us to be. I'm trying to think here. With the INFJ, and again, I would really recommend, Nikki, go. There are some places on YouTube. There are a couple that I'm subscribed to on myself that I have found very helpful. The other thing about the INFJ, and I think what I'm doing is I think it's a she, is trying to help identify if she is one, and then how it impacts your personal life or your spiritual life. One of the things that I would say a negative impact on it is the problems that I see in the church. That makes me very, very sad, because as an INFJ, I tend to see the potential in people that they don't see in themselves. And the idea is to try to help them be able to see that potential. And so when you see bickering and things like that in the church, it's extremely painful to me. It very painful emotionally wise. And the danger is that you can get angry about it, which I have done as well, and fall into sin. So just being outspoken. I would say it's very, very hard to lie to a person like me, because we see through it. It's almost like, because the thing is not only do you so the intuition will pick up the deceit, but the empathy will pick up the reason behind the deceit, whether it's devious or whether it is an insecurity, or whether a person doesn't want to deal with the emotions that the truth brings, we will see through that. And now, whether or not we choose to tell you that you just lied to me is a whole different story. Sometimes we will, sometimes I will. Sometimes I will just stand back and watch and not even let you know that I know that you just lied to me. And so, depending on the situation. And so, again, I would recommend everybody here take a personality test. But your personality, who you are, and the functions within your personality, and understanding those and knowing those, can impact your spirituality or your spiritual life in a very positive way, because you're going to be drawn to certain things. Okay, so I've talked about this before. Formal prayer as opposed to non-formal prayer. Okay, somebody that's very creative. I'm very creative as an INFJ. I love drawing. I love painting. I love playing guitar. I love writing. I love poetry. All that kind of stuff. So very, very creative. So when I first started praying the rosary, I didn't like it because it was just repetitive and over and over and over again. But it wasn't until my empathy was able to identify, and I think it started with the sorrowful mysteries. So again, being an empath, you're automatically caring about the other people. It's just who you are, right? So I was able to identify with Mary in caring for Jesus in the sorrowful mysteries, and then the rosary just exploded for me from there. Okay. The other aspect of that, of my personality type anyway, the INFJ, is that we tend to think about things. So you're a high level thinker. In other words, you're always thinking no matter what. So everything that you do has already been planned out in 1,000 different ways, and you've taken everything that can possibly go wrong in a situation or a project or whatever, and you've done away with all those, and you have everything planned out before you even start it. And that's usually why the projects go very well. It's also one of the reasons an INFJ is creative. Okay, but the high level thinking is that doesn't mean that you're smarter or an INFJ is smarter than anybody. It just means a high level thinker, that you dissect every aspect of every little thing. So when you take the rosary, the mysteries of the rosary, and then with the empathy, and you're able to relate with Mary, and then her emotions become your own, and then you're watching Jesus. And then you take that to the scriptures, and then your mind begins to start tying things together. Okay, so that's one of the ways I think that my personality type personally has impacted or had a positive impact on my spirituality. Okay, the other thing the INFJ is we have trust issues, and the reason is because when our trust is broken or there's a betrayal, that is the Achilles heel, and that is suffered like a death. Okay, and it's one of the reasons that one of the worst things you can do to an INFJ personality type is lie. Because as soon as you lie, you're chipping away at the pillar of trust. Okay, so there's we hate injustice, can't stand it. So it's another way to identify with Jesus that I've used. Very high moral values, honesty, integrity, fiercely loyal to the people you love, honor, things. The words like that mean a lot, and very rarely are they broken, if at all. Okay, and so because you can't sleep at night. So from that standpoint, that's how my personality type has impacted my spiritual life. Okay, so anytime that I've experienced, let's say, a betrayal, where it does, and honest to God, it feels like I've suffered a death, or if I've a heartbreak with a person that I love is experienced, like if someone else were to lose 5 family members, that's what that feels like to me, that loss. And so what I do is I take that pain, I embrace it out of love for God, and I offer it to Him for the salvation of souls. And it's hard to do. It's not an easy thing to do. INFJs, it's not an easy life to live because you're constantly picking up everybody else's junk. And so I think that would be the main ways that I've used my own personality type and knowing how the functions work, and have incorporated it into my spirituality. Now, with that being said, that can be done with any personality type. Okay, whether it be an INF or INTJ or an ENFP, or whatever personality type you are. If you understand the functions of that personality type, you will be able to incorporate it into your spirituality. And I think it probably happens automatically at a certain level. But when you understand your personality type and you understand why you react to certain things the way you do, the way certain things affect you, then it's easier to strengthen those traits, and also put up healthy boundaries as well. Okay, so that's a real danger for an INFJ as well. There is such a thing. Well, I think for every personality type, there's a healthy side and an unhealthy side. But boundaries are really, really hard for the INFJ. You usually tend to draw very toxic people to you. They're just drawn to you because they want your help. And then being a pure empath, you want to help that person. And so a lot of times people like myself can get used like that. But I would recommend that in thinking about this, because I thought it was really interesting. It was a really interesting question that I never really thought about. But I think everyone should take a really good, solid personality test, and then you know more about yourself. One of the reasons I think this is so important too, is because in your spiritual life, as we grow spiritually, and as we grow in intimacy with God, inevitably, the I don't want to say consequence, but the fruit of growing in intimacy with God is growing is growing in knowledge of self. Okay, so the more we grow, the closer we grow to God, the more we will know about ourselves in the way that He sees us, and that is only a good thing, because then again, like, it kind of falls into the personality type thing. Is why do I respond to this in this way? Why does this bother me so much? Why can't I stand to see injustice? So from the INFJ personality type, we see the world as this big project that you want to make a positive impact on the world and on the people around you. And it's hard because, again, you see the potential of the world, and yet the world doesn't see the potential in itself. And I think that's one of the saddest things for a person with a personality type like my own. It's one of the saddest things that we have to live with and wake up to every morning. But it's also done in faith and in hope, and knowing that the victory is already won and that will happen. So that adds a lot to the motivation to keep going. So I think I've answered this question. I think my personality type, just for me personally, and again, I don't think this is just me, I think it would be true for anyone who took a personality test and really began to try to understand themselves. I think it would have, as it has with me, a very, very positive impact on your spirituality. Okay? And it's something that just popped in my mind right now, is that I believe, and this is my personal opinion, there might be some psychiatrists or psychologists out there that disagree with me, but I believe that the psychological and the spiritual are absolutely intertwined. Absolutely intertwined. And in a good way and also in a bad way. Okay? So the fruits of the Spirit and growing in the grace of God, but also in deliverance ministry and the demonic. And the reason I know that is because I've studied that side of it. I've studied the psychology of some disorders and the symptoms of those disorders line up perfectly with the symptoms that I've read of well-known exorcists that have documented cases, detailed the symptoms, and then at the end named the demon that was behind it. But from a psychological perspective, you read it and it's the exact same symptoms. The only thing that's different is the conclusion they come to. They call it by a psychological name or a psychological disorder, as where the exorcist will call it by its name. And so these two are intertwined. There's no doubt in my mind about that. So with that being said, again, if you take a spirituality test, if you take a personality test, and the more you learn about yourself and why you respond to things this way, this not only is it going to help you build stronger boundaries or healthy boundaries, it'll help you understand that, maybe this part of me is a little bit too strong and I'm overreacting, or, in kind of work in that positive way. And that's just going to build you in virtue. Okay. But anywhere, the pain button is pushed, the suffering button is pushed, the joy, you meet some people and they're just always joyful, no matter what is happening. They're just full of joy. That comes from a personality trait, but it's also a charism. It's also a gift that's given by God, infused joy, right? And so the personality and the spirituality, I think, can walk hand in hand. And I think that the more you know about yourself from a personality standpoint and a psychological standpoint will also have a positive impact on spirituality, in your own spirituality, draw you into the right ministry, and inevitably will bear fruit if we stay faithful and if we're living in the faith. Any type of knowledge that you can come into is going to help you. Okay. If you take a person that's very driven, okay, that they love to read, okay, these people, you see them in the church, they end up becoming scholars and theologians, on whatever subject they're interested in. But that's why, is because they love to learn and read and, study. And then they have this unbelievable gift of remembering, for Nikki, that's another thing that will, runs in the INFJ personality type, is that you don't forget things. You have a memory like an elephant, and you noticed every single detail. And what happens is through the extroverted feeling and the high focused intuition, and then the interior or introverted thinking, everything that you're picking up around you will be filed away. Even if it doesn't make sense now, it'll be filed away in your brain, and it will be brought back later. And you'll just start putting it together like a puzzle. It makes a picture. It's one of the reasons that an INFJ, as a high level thinker, is very, very accurate in the outcome of things, because we're a forward thinker. So we're always thinking of every single outcome, and, usually pretty accurate on things. And so for me, again, it's hard. I would say pray for me, especially right now, for a certain intention. God is moving in a very, very powerful way in a certain situation. But I can also see where Satan is attacking this. And so please pray for protection of that, wisdom. What would I call it? Cast out any fear of truth. Pray for that intention. So anyway, keep me in prayer too, because I fall on the extreme side of the spectrum. So I'm kind of a weird person. I can get out of a car. Actually, this just happened a while ago. We were in a parking lot. I got out of the car, and for whatever reason, I noticed immediately, the first thing I noticed was 4 light posts at the very end of the parking lot. And then, this is what I mean by noticing things other people don't notice. In my head, I very quickly did the math, and I turned to the person. I said, there's 12 light posts in this parking lot? Because it was just 4, 8, 12. And so it just like, I don't know why I thought of it. It just, but things like that. So we're constantly just noticing things other people don't notice. Like, I don't know, the liquid moving through a leaf that you could only see through a microscope while we're talking to you. So anyway, I hope this was helpful in this for Nikki. Again, this is just a video that I did as a request, but overall, I think that anything that you can learn about yourself is going to be helpful in your spirituality. And a personality test is a very good way to start, because if you know what personality type you are and what functions you carry and how they operate, then you're going to understand more of how you operate. And if you understand how you operate, then you're going to understand why you're drawn to certain things or why you're not drawn to certain things. Like formal prayer. Let's say there's prayer that everybody says you should be praying every day or every Friday at 7:00, and you just don't like doing it. Well, then you feel guilty for not doing it. Well, there's a reason you don't want to do it. That probably has to do with something about your personality. And you shouldn't feel guilty because it's who you are and it's the way God created you. So he will lead you into a place of a prayer that you find comfortable doing, and that's more fruitful for you. Okay, I'm of the belief that that we should find a form of prayer that we are the most comfortable doing. Okay, so there's times where I don't feel like praying the rosary. I pray it, but I don't feel it. I don't feel like praying it. And it's those times where I'll go ahead and I will do the rosary, but then I'll go for a walk and I'll just start talking to Jesus from my heart. There's nothing wrong with praying like that too. Okay. So your personality type, understanding your personality type can have a positive impact on your spirituality. And I think if you understand the functions of your personality type, it can also help you understand more about yourself, so that where you would overreact or react in a negative way, then you're aware of those too, right? So you don't, because when you overreact, sometimes we can fall into sin. We can fall into anger. We can, get frustrated, that kind of thing. So I think it's really important to know your personality type. I'm glad Nikki asked this question because it's not something I hear people talk about ever. But I think it's really, really important. And so when I go back to when I first came into the church, and I think it was Father that asked me, because I don't even remember what we were talking about, but he asked me, have you ever taken a personality test? And that's where it started. That's where the whole journey started. So the other thing about the INFJ is love, right? It's like... we love on a very, very deep level and care very, very much about other people. And it's very genuine and very sincere and very true. And so that's the reason we have trust issues, because if there's a broken heart or if there's a betrayal, the depth of emotion that we feel, that an INFJ person or personality type, the depth of which those type of people feel is an absolute ocean. So it's the only way. And it's funny because I've seen videos before where they were talking about an INFJ personality type, and then there were like 1,000 comments of everybody that thought they were an INFJ. It's funny. Everybody wants to be an INFJ. Every girl wants to be an INTJ, but they only want to be one until they are one, because it's hard to manage. It's not an easy thing to manage. I think the INFJ personality is also, and again, this one's just for Nikki. I think an INFJ personality type are the only people on the planet that use both sides of the brain. If I might be wrong on that, but I think I read that somewhere. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end this. Probably rambled a little too long. If you haven't taken a personality test, I would highly recommend it. And the only reason I do is because it was recommended to me, and it has had a very, very positive impact, not only on me psychologically and emotionally, in helping me to understand myself, But as with Nikki mentioning this, I realized that it has had a very positive impact on my spiritual life, on the way I pray, on the way I can identify with Jesus. And these are just parts of my personality that are prominent. And we all have prominent traits in our personalities. So all of those prominent traits can be used somehow and in some way to serve God. Okay, he doesn't create things and make things by mistake. So with that being said, go spend $50 and take a personality test so you can learn all about yourself before God shows you. Okay, so may God bless you, may he keep you, may he cause his face to shine upon you, and may he grant you his peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.